Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other like-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Hi, welcome everybody. Glad you could join us today. It's going to be another adventure because I have Tim Swartz back with us, and I adore his books, and I think that they're not quite bedtime stories, but they're real close to it, and they're a pleasure to read, and even a greater pleasure to be able to talk to him about them. He is an Indiana native, an Emmy Award-winning television producer, videographer, and he's the author of a ton of books. You should check him out on Amazon after the show, of course. He's also appeared on the History Channel and Ancient Aliens and the Unexplained. And History's Mysteries. So he gets around. On top of writing all of his books, he gets around like crazy. Well, the book we're going to be talking about tonight is his book of it's about time, actually. It's Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. And it requests that you step into the enigmatic realm of the alternative realities with this book, starting with ancient mythologies that introduce deities believed to control time and fate, right up to the forefront of modern science. And as renowned physicists unveil mind-bending theories about the nature of time and space, from Einstein's general theory of relativity to quantum mechanics, this book examines cutting-edge ideas by modern physics that push the boundaries of our understanding of the universe. So, prepare to be transported beyond the limits of the conventional and into the mysterious realms of time, time slips, missing time, the alternative realities. Scientists may not yet agree on the nature of time or if time travel is even possible. But this book presents firsthand accounts of ordinary individuals who have pierced the fabric of time and witnessed the unexplainable. It's a charmingly wonderful book. And I could relate to it in lots of different ways, and I'm sure all of you can too, because we've all have experienced time slips or lost time, and it's not because we're getting senile or have Alzheimer's or anything like that. It's time is something that can't be touched or felt or described, but it is something we all experience. And so we're going to have Tim explain to us exactly what it is. So welcome to the show again, Tim.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you very much for having me on again. It's always a great pleasure talking with you.
Well, you write such great stuff. It's hard to not have you on.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You said at the beginning of your introduction that this is a good book for bedtime reading, and I've had some people tell me that about my books, though they were saying more along the lines of my books make them fall asleep, so they read them at bedtime. Who
Well,
knows?
I've read a number of your books. I've read uh, Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which is my favorite of all. And I've read your Tesla book. I've read your Admiral Byrd Diaries book. I've read a couple of others. So um, they have definitely not put me asleep. They've made me think a lot and ponder stuff, and the only bad thing about them is every now and then I get to a part where I want to talk to somebody about it, and there's not usually anybody there that I can, you know, swap ideas with. So having you on the
Right.
show is so cool. And I think everybody, time to me, because of the field I'm in, I don't believe in it exactly the same way. I wear a watch and I try to keep a schedule, but that's about it because the element of time, um, there's just something about it that I don't believe in. I'm going to be 81 years old. I don't feel that old. And the
Mhm.
only thing that tells me I'm that old is time. And I could do without time right about now. Just leave me alone and let me experience what it is I'm here for. So what what is time? I mean, I know you don't have an exact, but I mean, Einstein, Freud, all sorts of physicists have tried to define it, and they come up a little bit empty. So what's your definition?
Oh yeah, well, I mean that is the big question, isn't it? And that's one of the reasons that I put this book together because this has been a subject that has fascinated me for a long time. um, and it it all stemmed from my friend, the late Timothy Green Beckley,
Hmm.
who at the beginning of the time that I started writing for him, he had an idea for a book about time travel, and he had actually commissioned that to a house writer that he had by the name that went under the pseudonym of Commander X. And but unfortunately, Commander X had some health issues and wasn't able to complete his contract. So Beckley asked me if I wanted to take it on, and because time and time travel, the mysteries surrounding time had always been fascinating to me, I said, of course, I said yes. So he went and sent me the material that Commander X had already gathered and sent it all to me. And Commander X was going more along the lines for um, like the mystical and spiritual aspects of time. He had a lot of stories from like the ancient magicians who used magic spells from grimoires and things like that to try to circumnavigate time, and as well as more modern day concepts of using astral projection and meditation, things like that. And which I mean that stuff was great, but this would have been in the very late 1990s into the early 2000s, and we were seeing a big upheaval in modern day physics with scientists more and more willing to take a look at what time could be. Before that, time was considered almost a philosophical type of problem. Uh, there's a quote I think we have in this book at least that somebody asked the scientist, like what is time, and he said, "I can't answer that. You got to have to find a philosopher and ask him." And for for a long while, that was with the exception maybe of Einstein. Nobody else was really willing to take a deep dive into the question of time. And that was something that I wanted to, approach in this latest book, Weird Time, exploring the mysteries of time and space. Because in between the first book about time and time travel to now, there has been, even more developments in physics, looking into time. You know, you look at Stephen Hawking's, who had that best-selling book. What was it? The History of Time, I think is what it was called,
Yeah.
and it was a bestseller. Though a lot of people admitted that they had trouble making heads or tails on some of the more complex theories in that book. And because of Stephen Hawking's, I think more other physicists were willing to try to look into it as well. So as to going back to your original question about what I think time is, I don't know. Uh, is it an actual physical thing in our four-dimensional world? Time is considered the fourth dimension,
Hmm.
and or is it an artifact of the human mind, where because of various physical conditions that take place in our reality, namely the sun rising and setting every day, do we then construct this idea of time around that? As well as the phenomena of birth, living, and death. Uh, uh, you know, do we then just construct our own reality, making time a kind of like an arrow coming from the past into the present and then off into the future? Or is none of this correct? Is it still that big mystery that nobody can put their finger on yet?
Well, yeah, and the more you get into it, then you get your singular definition of time, and then, well, wait a minute, are there multiple timelines? Could there be different timelines that are going on at the same time? And time is not as linear as it is dimensional, and so you get to the point where it time travel. I mean, my gosh, we travel in time all the time. We just do it
Mhm.
in our own perception. But I have had experiences where, for instance, if I was driving someplace that I had driven forever, just back and forth forever, that usually took, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes. There were times when I would get in the car and leave, and then I would suddenly be where I was going, and I couldn't remember the trip in between. And was that time travel? Was that, what was that? It happened. It happened so frequently at one time in my life that I didn't even think it strange anymore. It was just sort of like, huh, look at that. And it's only, 10 minutes later by my wristwatch. So I think that I think we have the capability of traveling in time. I think we have if you have the perception, you can make it happen. And it's in my belief system. If you believe in something, then it's probably possible. You just haven't figured out how to do it yet.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because I get a lot of stories that have been relayed to me from people like yours. The car trips seem to be a very common factor in these types of stories of not missing time, but actually advanced time,
yeah,
where you will arrive at a destination a lot quicker than you normally would for some reason. And car trips, for some reason, seem to play a very big role in this. Now, whether or not it is a situation where you're experiencing what some scientists call, like road hypnosis, and
hmm,
we've all had that happen to us on long
oh yeah,
trips. But it could be that you reach some kind of altered mental state while on these trips
yeah,
that actually can for whatever reason, that's the big question, is able then to circumnavigate that normal flow of time that we all experience all the time throughout our lives. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, so I mean, definitely, in my opinion, our minds, our consciousness plays an extremely big role in
No,
our
yeah.
perception of time and how it flows within us and around us.
Well, when you stop to think about it, it isn't just the person that has been shoved ahead, it's an automobile.
Mhm.
That's a big deal. And I truly believe you create a bubble. I believe it has something to do with consciousness, creating a bubble around the person and or whatever they're in, and it just pops in and out. Um, yes, road hypnosis possibly on a long trip. I understand that, but I'm talking about um, things that happen on a regular basis, you kind of almost wish I had thought about. There were times when I was traveling back and forth between a friend's house, and there was a toll in between, and I never paid the toll.
Hmm.
So was I hopped over, or or did I blast through and I was going to get a ticket? There are things that you just shake your head at and shrug your shoulders and say, well, can I do that again? And it's so random, you are surprised by when it happens, so that it's a matter of, are we a prisoner of time, or have we not figured out how to unlock the door yet?
Well, and one of the other things also is that if you have a passenger in your car, they experience the same thing.
Yeah,
It's not like you experience a shortened time period and they experience the normal amount of time. No, I mean it's like you said. There's almost like a bubble of alternate reality that's taking place, surrounding the car. Um, and it's 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 again, it's one of these mysteries that has convinced me that at least for now, our our knowledge and our theories about time are really lacking. I don't think that we have yet really come across any good theories and hypotheses that can explain the true nature of time. Because face it, the time is intertwined with reality, with the universe and the multiverse as well. And it's one of these mysteries that really seems to just be always seem like it's just within our grasp, but never quite. And one other thing, Barbara, I wanted to mention is that you talked about is this something that I could try to repeat on these trips? Well, like other types of psychic or paranormal phenomena, if you start thinking about it and trying to work on it, then it's gone. It
yeah,
evades you. It evades you completely. It's when you're not thinking about it. It's when it
exactly.
happens. Yeah.
And to me, thought and the higher consciousness, to me, are two different things. But it is like thought. You can't see it, feel it, touch it, but you can manipulate it. And that's the same way with time. You can't see it, feel it, touch it. It's not something we can grasp. And so it's sort of like, I have wondered often, if we hit another planet that had humanoid people on it, or a species of human like people, you wonder if they had the concept of time as well. Is this just a concept that humans on the earth are wrestling with? Or is this a more global, a more universal, a more cosmic aspect that we're dealing with? I sometimes think it's the latter, the former. I think it's a human need to know something, so we created time in order to explain it. But is time something that other species and for instance, my cat has no idea about time except she knows when she needs to be fed. But it's not she's not saying it's time, it's my stomach is empty.
Hmm.
So so I'm wondering if other species, dogs, cats, deers, ants, they don't have a concept of time and it doesn't bother them at all. So is this something that we are focusing on that no other species in the cosmos deals with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I, because I think that at least our perception of time plays our consciousness, plays a very big role in it. I would imagine that other species on this planet, because they're just as conscious as we are.
Mhm.
A lot of people have this conceit thinking that only we're self-aware and only we are conscious, and other animals on this planet just go about their lives solely on instinct, and I don't believe that. So I mean, I think that other species have an awareness of time like we do, but you know. Because our minds are set, I think, more along the scale of, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember now, Barbara, what the term is. But I mean, we're very material based, very industrial, technologically based, and and because of that, I think that our perception of time plays a very big role in that. And other species, they're not. Um, they're not technologically based, at least not yet. Give them another million years or so, and that may change. Um, but you put up you put out a good point there, talking about whether or not other intelligent beings and on other planets would experience time as we do. At least one of the few things that we have grasped about time, and this stems from Einstein, is that gravity and speed also has a major influence on how time flows. So if you're living on a planet that has different gravity, either lighter or heavier, they're going to experience time differently than us. If they are in a part of the galaxy where their solar system is traveling faster as it spins through the cosmos, time is going to be experienced differently. Um, and that could be also why there are there are times on this planet where people will have these really bizarre sudden experiences of time slips or missing time or what have you. It could be that our solar system is traveling through a part of the galaxy where there are subtle differences in speed and gravity. Not so much that we would notice it on a physical scale, but it would definitely be noticed on the cosmic level, and time would be altered. It would be different. It would flow differently. Again, in the fourth dimensional world, and I think that time actually goes beyond the four dimensions as we understand it, and is maybe all persuasive or not persuasive at all. That's the mystery that we examine in our book. Is time a thing, or is it not a thing? Because that is one of the big tenets that we run into time and time again.
Yeah.
Um, that time isn't real, at least as we think of it, that it's not real.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. To me, it has something to do with the higher consciousness, the spirit within, not necessarily the lower consciousness, which is day to day stuff, but the higher, more philosophical consciousness that we all carry within us. Um, I sometimes, just wonder um, what the point of it is, and you look at ancient civilizations. They didn't have watches. It was, one harvest to another harvest, or um, they had seasons, but that's as close as they really got to time. And so it seems almost, I mean, it's important because especially when you're podcasting, that you have a time or a feeling of time, or it's something to keep time with. And age is the other thing too. um, you're getting older. Your physicality is going through changes. But there are some people who are my age and older. I have a client who's 101 and still absolutely independent. And then there are others that are, in their 60s and need to be in hospice. So,
Right.
time is, um, it's something we've never been able to define really. And once we do define it, it's too confusing to understand how it works. We know how a clock works, you know, theoretically, but 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 the passage of time on the human body and the human lifetime is something that is very, very strange. And at the same time, during a lifetime, we experience things like deja vu, like, thinking or feeling we're in a place we've been before. Now, is that time travel? Or is that the consciousness saying, in a past life, you've been here and I remember that? I mean, is deja vu a form of time travel?
I'm going to address first something that you had said about the ancients and their perception of time. It from what we know from archaeological records, uh, there obviously was an interest in keeping track of time from ancient monuments, megaliths, carvings in rocks, which were set up to show the passage of celestial objects in the sky.
Mhm.
Certain times of the year when the sun would rise to indicate the beginning of spring or the winter solstice. Periods like that, which seem to have some kind of, uh, uh, in one way or the other, significant to these ancient cultures. So obviously, I mean, this was an attempt to try to get a grasp on time, for various reasons. I mean, for knowing when to plant crops,
Mhm.
or spiritual, religious reasons, things like that. So, I mean, right from the very beginning, as a species, we have been very conscious of the so-called passage of time. And now, a physicist, some have speculated that time is perceived because it is entropy of the universe. The supposedly the universe was created in a big bang, and entropy then takes it going from an ordered state to an unordered state. Uh, and that our perception then of time is because this is happening on a universal scale. And as some physicists point out, at least as far as we know, you don't you generally don't get a reversal of orderly to disorderly. All right. If you drop an egg and it breaks, most people have never seen the reverse happen. A
No.
broken egg suddenly, coming back and becoming a whole egg again. And so that's, a lot of physicists have kind of glommed onto that and saying, well, that's what time is. Time is our innate perception of entropy in the universe as it continues to expand outward, becoming more and more disorderly. But again, I think that we're looking at that on a very tunnel visioned and material level, because obviously the universe and our reality is a lot bigger than that. All right. And again, we get into this idea that we just don't have the physical capabilities to understand that. We get glimpses of it in times of meditation, astral projection, paranormal experiences, or when you're driving in your car and you have
Yeah.
these strange events. Those are hints, in my opinion, on what the nature of reality is. But again, like I said previously, it's just always seems to be out of our grasp, because for whatever reason, when you try to concentrate on this or focus on this, then it stops and it eludes us. Only when we are not looking for something does it reveal itself. But again, it doesn't reveal itself for long. It's just a glimpse, just a taste, just a little taste of what the true nature of reality is.
Well, yeah, and and there are times when there are time slips, when there are time, you call them time slips. I called them folding in time. Same thing. I often will see something from the past, a brief glimpse of it, and then it's gone, and reality is back to where it was. The biggest place that I have ever seen folding time is with the World Trade Center. That experience was so impactful. It 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 imprinted in time itself, I believe.
Mhm.
And there are times when I look at it and I can see an overlay of what that day was about, and then it's gone and it's back. So that to me is what a time slip would be, a folding of time. Um, what about when people in the book you have several people who have experienced driving down a road and it suddenly they go through a fog and it seems like they're back in time and the people don't even know them or notice them, and then they keep going and they're back in time present. I mean, what is that? Is that a folding in time and experiencing the same thing?
Yeah, time slips. I mean, that's one of my favorite subjects. And the first book that I wrote for Tim Beckley's Global Communications, um, I ran into the concept of time slips, and it had I've continued to research this subject, because after the first book I had a lot of people write to me with their own experiences,
Hmm.
and they'd write to me and they'd say, oh my god, thank heavens I read your book, because I thought I was the only one. I thought
Yeah,
I was the only person who had this experience, and I thought that maybe I had had a stroke or something like that. And and who can blame them?
sure.
Because it can be a very disorienting experience for these people, and it's like you said, um, somebody could just be walking down the street and all of a sudden the sidewalk underneath them changes from concrete to brick
Hmm.
and the cars disappear on the road to be replaced by horse-drawn carriages. People will have these experiences and all of their senses are involved. It's not like they're having a just like a mental impression. No, these people from what they and I'll go into this a little bit after what I'm saying here, Barbara. Um, the experience to them is just as real as what we're experiencing now. But it seems like that they have suddenly been transported to the past or even the future. I've had reports of people who say that it appeared to them that maybe they had got a glimpse of the future. Sometimes if they come across other people or animals, they're ignored, like they're not there. Sometimes there is an interaction. Dogs will bark at them. People will look at them and be frightened, or some people will will talk to them. Most of these experiences are brief, at at least the ones where people have come back. Who
Yeah.
knows? There's a lot of missing people in the world, and I hate to say this, but have some of these people had these time slips and weren't able to come back. Um, but just as quickly, the experience will end, and they'll find themselves back in the present, mystified on what had happened to them. Now, I'll tell you a personal story of mine. I didn't put this in the book um, because I'm always afraid that if you put too much of your own personal experiences in these types of books, then people will think that you're trying to push an agenda, and I don't have an agenda to push. So I'm just
Hmm.
we're just putting out ideas and of subjects that we enjoy. But when I was about 16, uh, uh, just recently had got my driver's license, and myself and a friend borrowed my dad's car to just to drive around. We grew up in a small town in central Indiana, not much to do, so you would go on, you'd get in the car and drive around. So we decided that we were going to go from our town north on a highway towards a slightly larger town, a town called Berrien, Indiana. And I was very familiar with this road because, we had made this trip a lot of times with my parents, school trips, basketball games, stuff like that. So I knew this road fairly well. At some point coming back, we got a flat tire. So we'd pulled off at the side of the road to change the flat. And unfortunately, the shoulder of the road was it was kind of it was sloped somewhat and gravelly, and the we couldn't get a firm footing with the jack. All right, the jack kept slipping in the gravel. And we had stopped in front of this farmhouse. And this older gentleman came out of the farmhouse. Obviously he had been a farmer. He was wearing, like overalls, but he was older, maybe retired. And he brought with him a flat piece of wood that we could put under the jack. in order to get a firm grasp. And then we were able to change the tire and be on our way. Well, my mom found out later what had happened, and she baked like a pie or a cake. I can't remember exactly what it was for me to take back to thank him for helping us out.
Yeah.
That was, it was nice of him. I mean, it was a highway and he could have just ignored us, but he didn't. He came out and helped us. So when I went back, and I went back by myself, I didn't bring my friend with me. I could not find this place. Drove up and down this section of highway. Could not find the house. I knew exactly where it was. That was the thing about it is I knew where it was. Like I said, I was familiar with the surroundings. Could
Mm-hmm.
not find this house. The only thing that I could find was I do remember that from their front door out to the road where the mailbox was, they had like a walkway, and on either side of this walkway were teacup rose bushes, which were blooming at the time. Now, teacup roses are just like tiny roses,
Yeah.
and they almost look like they're wild roses, because they just grow all over the place. And but these bushes were trimmed and well taken care of, and I found a place that had these teacup roses, except now they were just wildly overgrown, but there was no house. There wasn't even a foundation where a house would have been. But obviously, something had been there one time because these rose bushes were there, and this is something that generally doesn't grow in the wild. People usually, have to plant, and, old fashioned, type of rose bushes. So I don't know. I never could figure it out. So was this a time slip? Um, was it a ghostly experience? I don't know. The thing about it is that I would think that if it was a time slip, that if we had somehow experienced a past time, that this old guy, this old gentleman, would have been surprised to see a modern car in front of his house. I mean, it wasn't the best car, it was an old station wagon, but still, you
Yeah.
would think this guy would be like, that's a weird car you got there, boys, but he didn't, we just talked normally, he didn't say a thing. So I don't know, that's, it's one of the mysteries about time slips that I've examined over the years, whether or not um, they are time slips in the conventional way that we look at time, past, present, and future, or whether or not it was a slip into an alternate reality.
Yeah, I was just
Uh,
going to say it could have been another timeline that was, concurrent that just,
yes, yes,
some,
exactly.
some,
And that's one of the things that we look at in the book. Could some of these time slips actually be visits into alternate timelines, which may not, may not be exactly on the same, what I'm trying to think of what the word would be, the same rate of time flow as ours. That if you were to accidentally slip into an alternate reality, it may be, 10, what would seem to be to us like 10 or 20 years into our past, or 10 or
um,
20 years into our future, that sort of thing.
yeah, I think I experienced a time shift at one time, either that or my sister is crazy. And I'd rather think it was a time slip. I was driving with my sister and brother-in-law. I was in the back seat, and my sister started talking about things that had happened in the past that never happened. I mean, and these were big things. It wasn't,
Mhm.
you know, somebody was at a dinner and somebody wasn't at a dinner or anything like that. These were situations where I finally said to my brother-in-law, "Pull over. I want to know what you've done with my sister, because none of that happened."
Mm.
And my sister just looked at me and said, "What do you mean? You were there at all the time," and the whole thing. And it was like, and my sister is still alive and still has all of her marbles. So at that point, it really felt like I was, she wasn't my sister. I had no way of in any way explaining it in any other way. So, you know, it's kind of like, okey doke. I don't know what to say, but that just wasn't my sister. And it really, it has bothered me quite a bit since then, that 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 every now and then my sister will talk about situations that just never happened. And at one point, after my mom passed away and we were separating the things in the house, she wanted to take some vases that were on the mantelpiece, and I said, "Well, my late husband gave those to me. Those aren't up for divvy." And she said, "What do you mean? You were," and she said, "You weren't married to anybody by that name." And
Wow.
it was, "Yeah, you were at the wedding, you know, you were there." And she said, "No, you just have the first husband. You never married again." And and she held to it, And
Mm.
but today, if you talk about it with her, yeah, she remembers my late husband. But at that, I it really felt so strange to me that she was so sure of herself, and
Mm.
yet I was so sure she was nuts. But I think we'll just call that a time slip, and you know, not go any further with it. It's either there or she was
You know,
losing her
that's
mind.
that's interesting because we just recently interviewed this an author and archaeological explorer by the name of Graham Phillips
Oh,
from the
yeah,
UK.
I know him.
And yeah, okay. Well, he told us this fascinating story where him and his partner had gone to this megalithic site that
Mhm.
had been the center of an early 19th century occult group that later would kind of turn into the theosophy movement. But while they were walking around, and this was kind of in an isolated area, he said that they noticed that it was starting to get kind of dark, and that coming from a nearby woods was over these woods, and then coming over them was this cloud. It was like a relatively sunny day, but instead this cloud suddenly formed and came over them and started storming on them. Raining, thunder, lightning, extensive lightning. And he said that there was one lightning bolt that seemed to produce some kind of electrical effect on some of these nearby stones around them that seemed to be like a spark, uh, 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 like bouncing off of each one of them. He said that afterwards they went to a couple of locations that they had been previous to this event, and things had changed.
Mm.
The people that they had previously talked with didn't remember them. Um, Features on a building had changed. They had been inside this one building, and now it was almost impossible to get inside of it because the door was like boarded up. When just like a week before, it had been able to open, and they had gone inside. Um, a couple of interviews that they had done, the people insisted that they had never met them before and had never interviewed them. And when they ran the tape back and showed them this
Hmm.
interview,
Oh,
these
wow.
people could these people couldn't explain it. They were like, "We don't remember doing this for you at all." And so and then, afterwards, other kinds of just, small things that were different, that were changed. And he wonders, whether or not that event had put them into an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate Mandela effect. you know, where you're not just experiencing, one little change, but that a lot of things around you have changed. And that's a
And it was
fascinating
both of
story.
them, huh?
Both of them, yes, exactly.
Wow.
But and the great thing about this is that they had these videotapes of these interviews. They came with them because a lot of times in these types of situations, like other physical things change with them. Recordings will be gone. Photographs won't be there any longer. But in this situation, they had the evidence, uh, at least to, even though the people
Wow.
denied that these things had happened, they had the evidence that yes, they had. So, and once again, this is one of the big mysteries about time. And as experience say through like time slips
Hmm.
and time manipulations is, I mean, are these experiences journeys to the past or the future as we think about them conventionally, and as we see in science fiction movies or read in science fiction books, or is there more to in play than that? Again, we approach in this book this idea of alternate realities, parallel worlds
Yeah.
that exist alongside of our own, and that all of these questions that we are asking are kind of meaningless, because the true nature of our reality is not as simple, is not as cut and dried as physicists are trying to find. Naturally, when we look at things scientifically, we expect things to be fairly simple. That's the way nature is. Nature goes by the path of least resistance. All right. But there are things that are a lot more complex. Life in general is very complex. We all started out as, single cell organisms, and, look
Yeah.
at us now, you know. So, it could be that the nature of reality is a lot more complex than we care to think.
Well, when you look at something like the Philadelphia experiment, where a ship was transported from New York to Virginia and then back again, or Philadelphia, I forget where, but
Uh, yeah,
it
Philadelphia.
the entire ship was transferred in time and space, um, disastrously. I know Tesla was supposed to be working on that with them, and he withdrew from the experiment. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. Um, and would you say that was time travel?
Possibly. Naturally, if you are going to have a form of teleportation, all
Yeah,
right, the instantaneous transfer of matter from one location to another, that's going to involve time travel. I mean, that's the way it works. You can't you can't make that hop in space without involving time as well, because the two are intertwined. Space time. That's what Einstein called it.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, it is a form of time travel. Now, people have come out over the years claiming to have been part of the Philadelphia experiment, and Al Bielek, is a
Yeah.
good example of somebody who claimed that not only did this ship go from Philadelphia to the Norfolk, Virginia shipyard, instantaneously. But there was also a point where they became unstuck in time, and that him and his brother actually jumped off the ship and found themselves, in a future time.
Yeah.
Um, so whether or not his stories are true, I mean that's up to debate. But it seems to me that after the Philadelphia experiment, there was a lot of interest with the military into taking this idea further. Uh, so then you ended up with like the Montauk experiences or experiments
Yeah.
that took
Well,
place on Long Island, and some of that did appear to be uh, attempts at time travel. The thing about it is the Montauk experiment also involved people who had superior psychic abilities. So once
yes.
again, we're back into this realm of the human mind and the human consciousness having the ability, maybe augmented with technology, but still that defining point is that human aspect to this. Now, it makes you wonder then if, say, the Philadelphia experiments, there were several of them,
Hmm.
if they would have happened the same way if there weren't live personnel on board. Because there were similar attempts using animals that had a somewhat similar reaction, but not quite the same. It wasn't until they had live sailors on board, volunteers, they were
Yeah.
volunteered to be on board, that things got weird with that. So again, there's that human aspect, that our mind, our consciousness, which seems to play a very big role in the perception of time,
Yeah.
and the ability to go beyond it.
Well, if, like I said before, if you believe in something, you can make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if the sailors didn't believe in what was happening, I can see how they could screw up the transport.
Mm-hmm. Oh
This is,
yeah, well, and it was messed up, because
oh,
there
yeah.
were a lot of sailors who just disappeared completely. Some of them were just dead on the decks. Others were found embedded
Yeah.
in the bulkhead of the ship, which physically that's impossible. Yet it happened, you know.
So has there ever been someone who what could be said was an authentic time traveler?
Well, there's been a lot of people who have claimed
Yeah.
that they were authentic time travelers, and you know it's really hard to pin that down. Much like people who claim contacts with you know extraterrestrials or UFO beings.
Yeah.
Some of them seem to be telling the truth, but until they can come out and offer really definitive proof, bring that UFO guy, in front of national television, and interview him. Same thing with these so-called time travelers. Now there are people who have had experiences, and we have them listed in the book, that appear to be um, who appeared that they had time traveled. Um, but again, as of yet, nobody has really come up. You haven't had somebody, because right now, we see on, especially on social media, we see a lot of people who are saying, like, I am a time traveler from such and
Yeah.
such year. Here is what is going to happen in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
And it never happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
It never happens. Now, some physicists would say that the act of going into the past changes the future timeline. All right? That if you are able to travel into the past, it alters it in such a way that the timeline then branches off into a completely different direction or multiple directions. Probably something that happens naturally anyway.
Yeah.
But then if you travel into the past, you kind of force the issue. And things that happened to you when you lived in, your future world will now probably never happen. So you can predict all you want, it's not going to happen because you're on a different timeline. So who knows?
Yeah.
Some of these guys may actually be time travelers, and they come back and they're like, oh yeah, well, there's going to be a big storm on July 5th and an earthquake in August, and it doesn't happen, and they're like, I wonder why it didn't happen.
Yeah. One of the places where I think time travel may have occurred, but of course I can't prove it, and I wouldn't be able to prove it because well, there's just no way to. Would be the Rendlesham Forest event where the drone came through time, theoretically, and the the figures, the objects that Penderson took down were binary code, and when translated, they inferred they were from the year 8100, which, when I thought, gee, that's really cool. In 8100, they're still using the binary code. And then I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me. That binary code would be used 8100 year, that's thousands of years in the future. And yet that to me had greater, maybe that shuttle did come through time, but there's no way of knowing. I mean, it's a crapshoot, any way you look at it. And you kind of, but what about Father Ernetti, the
Mhm.
Italian monk? Now he theoretically had a time machine.
Yeah, it rather than a time machine, you think of it more like along the lines of a viewer.
Oh,
The
okay.
he Yeah, he developed a machine that could look back into the past. And I suppose if you take into consideration some of the ideas of modern physics, if you tuned it right, you may be able to tune into the future as well. But anyway, I mean, Father Ernetti. Now, this guy was a Benedictine monk
Hmm.
and from Venice, and was very smart guy who his area of expertise was medieval music, but he also had a degree in physics as well, and had written a number of very acclaimed books. So I mean, this wasn't just some guy who just came in off the street, to make these wild claims. But he said it started with him when he was helping another priest um, with, and this would have been in the early 1950s. They were using an oscilloscope to examine recordings of modern Gregorian chants. And he was working on, and I'm not a music expert, so
Mm-hmm.
but they were, he was working on how um, uh, Gregorian chants work, and I suppose like the chords, and things like that. They're using an oscilloscope to try to get an electronic analysis of this music. So, in attempting to set up a tape recorder for this, they were having difficulties, and this other priest um, just exclaimed out loud in frustration something along the lines of, um, "Oh, Dad, oh, Father," talking about his late father. I wish you were here to help me with this, rather than cursing. It's since he was a
Yeah.
monk. You don't take the Lord's name in vain. So
No.
so instead, he evoked his dead father. And later, when they went back and listened to this recording after they got it working, after he said that, the very clear voice of his deceased father came through on this tape recording and said along the lines of course I'll help you, my son. I'm always here with you." And this was fascinating to Father Ernetti. And he was wondering, all right, is this the voice of a discarnate entity? You know,
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of his father, was it the voice from the past? I want to look into this. So apparently he got funding from the Vatican, and he claimed that he got help from physicists at the time, and they constructed this device that used radio frequencies with antennas that were tuned to different frequencies, and were able to pull in light and voice images from the past. The theory being that all of this stuff is energy, and energy can never be destroyed. It can be
Yeah.
changed, turned into different forms, but it can never be destroyed. The theory being that it's all out there somewhere. Everything that we say or do is still out there.
Uh-huh.
Maybe this is something along the lines of, the ancients talking about the Akashic records, you know, and
Yeah.
that with the proper instrumentation, you can pull that in. He never went and completely explained how this was done, what frequencies they were working on. But he did say that it took quite a while for them to get that, and it was never completely perfected. He said that the images that they would get, and they used like an old this would have been like in the 60s, so like an old television set type
Mm-hmm.
of situation, and the images would be blurry, and it would be hard. I mean, they couldn't just like focus in closely on people. It would be kind of like wide shots, and the audio would be not that great, but it did work, he said.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, there was an Italian newspaper that in the 70s wrote about Ernetti and interviewed him. And they ran a picture of a close-up face of a statue of Jesus that was in an Italian church, with claiming that this was one of the pictures that he had taken with this device. And it was quickly found out that no, it's not. It was taken from like a postcard, you
Yeah.
know. And so then everyone was saying, well, Ernetti hoaxed it all. And
Oh.
Father, right from the very beginning, Father Ernetti said, no, I didn't give them this picture. This was just something that they pulled, from their archives and ran to go with the article. And he insisted up to his dying day that the device worked, and they were trying to get it to work better. But at that point, the Vatican called him in and said it would be best if you just dismantle it and give it all to us, because we don't like the publicity.
Yeah.
And you know, and I speculated that if you have a device like this and you're able to get it to work fairly well, then in the wrong hands,
Yeah.
that could be really disastrous. Think about it.
Oh,
You could use
absolutely.
it. You could use a device like that to spy on anyone at any time. You could discover secrets that were never meant to be known. I mean, it would be a voyeur's delight.
Oh
And as
gosh, yeah.
well, yeah, well, and as well, think about the church, the Vatican, and all the secrets that they have
Yeah.
from their, millennia in operation. Stuff that they don't, they would never want to get, to be made public. Because one of the things that Father Ernetti said was that they were able to tune in to, say, like the crucifixion of
Yes. Yeah.
Jesus, you know, and that they were able to take pictures of that, pictures that weren't submitted to, to these newspapers,
Yeah.
but the Vatican had them. And the Vatican, said, "Nah, this is something that we don't want it to go any further than this." So allegedly, somewhere, in the Vatican secret archives is this dismantled device of Father Ernetti's.
Oh, what a shame. I mean,
Mm.
I mean, you're right. In the wrong hands, it would be awful. And probably he went too far to go back to the crucifixion. But I can understand why a priest would do that. But
Yeah. Well,
you know,
and again, one of his main interests is he wanted to tune in to Gregorian chants from medieval times. That's
yeah.
really what his interest was, you
Well,
know. And
well,
and and I mean, he was trying. I guess one of the problems was that they were having difficulty pinpointing time periods, because it could just,
yeah.
I mean, it was hard to tune in,
Well,
but his interest was music.
The Gregorian chants were the beginning of solfeggio music, which is being
Hmm.
used today. I mean, that's the first place where it's ever documented that the solfeggio music had any effect because the tonal qualities was so pure that it did take you into an altered state of consciousness where
Right.
I mean I can understand him wanting to do that. That's
Yeah.
you know one of those inventions that probably will never be seen again, but I can, yet at the same time, I wouldn't mind hearing my mother's voice or my father's voice again.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool or spooky depending on what they said. But
Well, one of the things that I discuss in the book Weird Time about Father Ernetti's chronovisor, which
yeah,
was the name that he gave it, was that this could have been one of the first EVP ITC types of devices. All right. And these are devices, I mean, still in use today with people attempting to communicate with the other side, with people who have passed away, and in fact, not so much here in the United States, but especially in Europe in the 1980s, ITC was the attempt to use video in the attempt to get images of the other side. And a lot
yeah,
of these people had some just really incredible successes with this. I mean, we think of EVPs here in the United States now as these little snippets of barely understood words that supposedly, like ghosts are saying in haunted houses.
Yeah.
But true EVP and ITC devices go far beyond that. Long conversations, easily understood, video images of faces and locations that appear to be other worlds, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, it could very well be that that's what Father Ernetti's device, was, that this was an early EVP ITC machine. So was he really tuning in to the past? Or was he tuning into um, alternate realities? But again, is there a difference? That's one of the things that we examine, in the book. There may not be a difference.
Well,
It could all be the same.
my sister in the alternate timeline had a different memory than I did, for sure.
Right.
But
Yes.
that was so weird.
Yeah.
Um, all of your books, um, I think one of the fascinating things about all of your books is it makes people think,
Mhm.
and it makes people stretch themselves, and it makes people, wonder what if. And I think that on top of the fact that your books are all fascinating, um, and you learn from them, it also opens you up to the possibility and the potential that there is more out there, which is, you know, fabulous. Um, you seem to have been almost driven to write all these books and continue to. What is your purpose? I mean, everything that I write, if I have to really sit down and be honest and see and look and look and look and look, there's an underlying purpose that I'm putting out there. It isn't just an ego thing. There's a purpose. What is it that drives you to write all these books that are fabulous?
Well, since I was a kid, this kind of stuff has always fascinated me. Um, I mean, I know I probably told you, the story of how I was kind of drug kicking and screaming into it all when I had to write an essay in like third grade about flying saucers when I didn't have any knowledge or really did not care one way or the other about flying saucers. And then I was teased mercilessly, being the guy, everyone thought that I was the guy who believed in little green men from Mars and stuff like that. Um, but then people would come to me and tell me their own personal stories,
Hmm.
of things that happened to them, UFO sightings, ghostly visitations, and it was these personal stories that really fascinated me. I mean, here were people who had really they didn't have any desire to publicize what had happened to them. They didn't care that anybody else knew. They were just mystified by what had happened to them. And and a lot of people, they look for reassurance that they're not crazy,
Yeah.
because face it, most people um, don't really have a lot of knowledge about these kinds of things.
Hmm.
And when something bizarre in their life happens, they don't know how to file that away in their brain. All right. We go through our lives every day with familiar things. Get up in the morning, have your cup of coffee, eat breakfast, go to work, come home, watch television, go to bed, do it all over again. Now, say that you get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, drive to work, and a UFO suddenly comes down from the sky, lands in front of your car. Little guys come out, collect rocks and plants in front of you, and then fly away again. Where do you file that away in your brain?
Right.
And so a lot of people think, well, it didn't happen. I'm crazy. I'll either ignore it, insist that nothing ever happened, and just bury it down deep inside where it'll fester into all kinds of different neuroses over the years.
Yeah.
Other people become obsessed and try to find a rational explanation to the point where, it almost drives them crazy. So, a lot of people then, I mean, they'll come to people, someone like me, and tell me their story, and they're relieved, really, when I tell them, no, you're not crazy. I've had a lot of other people tell me very similar types of stories, you know. And you could see the weight lifted off of their shoulders because maybe they could never have told anybody else. You don't tell your coworkers. Oh, God forbid. Don't tell your family. Family would be worse.
Yeah.
You become the you become the butt of a joke for every Thanksgiving for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is one of the things that drives me for these books. First of all, I'm fascinated by all of this kind of stuff, all right? And I want other people to know that their experiences really happened to them. All right? If you had this experience, don't doubt yourself. Don't think that you're crazy because other people for thousands of years have had very similar types of experiences.
Yeah.
So, and I want other people to know these things and to, I don't know, maybe be as fascinated by this stuff as I am and to realize that there is a lot more to this world, a lot more to our reality than we can ever even dream about. And that's to me, that is what is so beautiful about it all, is that life is such a big mystery, and it's just it's a joy to be able to look into this kind of stuff and realize that there's just so much more than what our mundane reality seems to say
Oh,
that there is.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of us, it's not fame and fortune for sure, because Lord knows you don't get rich on
No,
books. But
no.
but it's a matter of, okay, so I'm building another stepping stone that I can step on to move to yet another level and yet another level and yet another level. I think that it is a matter of consciousness. If your consciousness is open to all of the strange and wonderful, it's not strange and wonderful anymore. It's just more of reality that we haven't really embraced or made a part of our lives or our consciousness yet. But you
Yeah.
certainly you have, and Graham Phillips is another one that does the same thing. Lord knows, he goes off on tangents that are just incredible, has phenomenal experiences, and then shares them. And I think a lot of times when people read books like yours, they realize, that hasn't happened to me, but if it's happened to someone else, it could be possible. And as soon as you open up the possible, then chances are it slips in and puts its toe in the water every now and then, and when it feels safe, it opens more and more and more. And a lot of the times when I talk to people, it's keep track of your synchronicities, because the more you acknowledge the synchronicities, the more you write them down and anchor them in reality, the more the more you're going to experience them, and the more profound they're going to become, because you've opened a channel to that aspect of reality, or whatever reality is. And it goes beyond that. So it's an exciting, wonderful adventure to read your books. um And like I said, Jeff the Talking Mongoose was my favorite. However, Tesla and Admiral Berg and certainly this book and a couple of others that I've read, again, do set your mind in motion and saying, okay, if that's possible, then what else is possible?
Exactly.
So that
Exactly.
you're opening doors for a lot of people, and hopefully a lot of people will pay attention. Just notice the time, and I do want to give you a chance to let people know where you are and how to get to you and how to tune into your programs and radio shows, because you do have a radio show that you're going to go work on next. So put out your information.
Sure. Well, if you're interested in my books, you can find them. The easiest way would be to go to Amazon.com and just type in my name, Tim R. Swartz, and they'll all come tumbling out for your reading pleasure, both as print and ebooks. Our most recent book that we've been talking about on this show is called Weird Time: Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. And, we have some just really fantastic authors that have contributed to this book. They contributed as well to our previous book, Mimics the Others Among Us. People like Sean Castile, Diane Tessman, Scott Corrales, Nigel Watson. All of these people are great writers and share this love, this zeal for these types of things, and I'm just so lucky to be able to get them to contribute to my books, not just my books, our
Yeah.
books. We all contribute to this, and the results. I mean, as you can see, I mean, I'm just so proud of the quality and the just the fantastic information that we're able to put out in these books. Now, if you want to find out more about the book Weird Time, we've got a website which is weirdtimebook.com. And just some supplemental information. And, you could order the book. It'll take you to a link on Amazon. And if you want to listen more, I am the co-host on the radio show The Paracast with Gene Steinberg, and it's heard on practically every popular streaming platform. And its website is theparacast.com. Easy enough.
Yeah, very easy. Well, I want to thank you so much and let you get on to the stuff you've got to do. And look forward to getting you on when I dip into your library once more and read another one of your wonderful books.
Oh, my pleasure, Barbara. I always have such a great time talking with you. And I know you had said early in the program that you enjoyed Jeff the Talking Mongoose. If you want to bring me back sometime and we'll talk about that book, that is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I'm like you, been fascinated with Jeff since I was a kid. Believe it or
Well,
not.
after he visited our show a number of times, after we did an interview, I may risk it because he was such a character. I really um, we will get you back on that one. So thanks again for being here and thanks for spending your time with me.
Thanks, Barbara. Had a great time today. I hope your audience enjoys this as well.
Oh, me too. Take care now.